not necessarily always about getting the highest return on investment, but it's the highest and best use of your time. So here's one that I never really thought about in this particular way, or just haven't really talked about. I guess I've thought about it, every single day actually, is when you're thinking about return on investment, a lot of people think very easily, if I put, let's say, $10,000 into something, and whatever that is, a business, a piece of real estate, stock, whatever it is, what is the return on investment that I'm going to get? And most people think about that return investment over the course of a year. So I put in $10,000, let's say, in a EFT, mutual fund, something like that. Am I going to get 6 to 8% return? And then they kind of judge if that is going to be worthwhile. The secondary to that, you could put money into real estate, get a better return, less return. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that most people think about return on investment of an idea of, if I'm taking a certain amount of dollars and putting it into something, what am I going to get back on that? Now, this is kind of an interesting subject, especially when you are late in your wealth building, where it's not necessarily a point of return on investment, like you actually have a lot of capital and you really are just kind of running out of your ability to have so many sort of irons in the fire, meaning, maybe you got some businesses going, maybe you have some real estate going, maybe you're doing some stocks, maybe there's just a bunch of different things that you're doing, and you start to have to think about return on investment and not in dollars, because when you're thinking about dollars, you're thinking about, hey, I only got $10,000, and if I put it into something, I want to maximize my return. But what happens if you have 3 million or 4 million or 5 million dollars, and you can put it into something? You can still think about the highest return on investment, but you have to also start to think about, because those investments are going to be a little more complex, they might be diversified, because if you're going larger, you should be diversifying over multiple, not only just different asset classes, but also within that asset classes. For example, just don't do all real estate, do real estate and stocks and private business. And then within that, if you're doing private business, don't do just restaurants, do a restaurant, do a car wash, do a liquor store, do a whatever. But the point is that you start to, if you're thinking about this already, you start to wear yourself thin. So now it's not necessarily about the return on investment, but it's actually about the return on investment, and not on your dollars, but on your time. So for example, we put in, roughly about $1 million or so into a restaurant, and the restaurant's doing well, like it's getting a good return on investment. But it's not necessarily about, hey, I could have took that $1 million and put it into something else, and got a higher return. But we're starting to think about, with the COVID and the loss of employees, and it's just getting really hard to find employees and maintain people. It's just sucking up a lot of our time. And so for us, we're looking and going, hey, the return is good investment. We would actually sell the business probably right now, take a loss, because of the time constraints that it's taking up. As a lot of people tell you, oh, you can just go into something, travel the world. It's not really like that. That's not actually how it happens. That's the Instagram, that's the TikTokers or whatever. It doesn't work like that. If you're going to invest in stuff, then you got to be actively manage the material, participate. So the point is that, yeah, you can put money into something. You might get a higher return, let's say 20% off of a restaurant, cash on cash return, where if you put into something like real estate, maybe you only get an 8% or 10%, so half of it. But you have to look at it, man, if I put money into real estate right now, into an Airbnb, I might spend, I don't know, let's say 3 hours a week, talking and back and forth with people that are looking to rent, making sure that things are getting cleaned properly, whatever, just overall managing the property. I may spend like 3 or 4 hours. However, only getting 10% return. However, if I put the same amount of money, I might get a 20% return in the restaurant, but the restaurant's going to take me 25 hours a week, because I'm always being pulled back there, because call outs, because it's just, whatever the business is, because it's just a time suck. It really is actually more beneficial, pending you have the right capital, it's better to put money in a bunch of different things that actually take up no time, specifically because that time is valuable. And like for right now, for example, I could go to the restaurant and let's say, okay, I'm going to make, The sales are going to be $5,000 today, so I'll make 20%. I'll make $1,000, but that is an entire day's worth of business. If I have to be there for half of that, or for even 2 or 3 hours of that, well, I made it through $1,000 over that 3 hours, and that sounds pretty good. If I took the same 3 hours and I applied myself to just, hey, let me just stick with the stock market, I can make, $1,000 in the matter of maybe 15 minutes to an hour, early trading. So you kind of start to have to think about the pros and cons of that. And we're starting to do that. We're starting to run our business and with a mindset of going, what really is not necessarily what is my money being worth, but actually what is my timing worth, and assuring that you, as managing the different businesses, that you are managing and maximizing your per hour. So if I'm trading in the morning and let's say I'm doing $250 an hour, that sounds pretty good. If I go to the restaurant and I have to replace a manager because let's say they called out or something, my benefit there is, just whatever the manager's salary would have been. Let's call that $30 an hour. Like, it's actually much better for me to close the business and focus on actually just trading that morning than it is for me to actually go in and fill that particular spot. If I have to do some Airbnb, it might even be better if I don't even rent that spot, let's say at a $400 a night, if that means that I could have spent, more time doing something else. So just something to think about. I don't know if any of you guys have sort of thought about that. Any guys that are kind of building up, that it's not necessarily always about getting the highest return on investment, but it's the highest and best use of your time in combination. And there's probably a formula on there. Maybe we'll post a video about sort of what is that exact formula. But it is something that as an entrepreneur, as you sort of get a lot of irons in the fire, as you diversify, it can get pretty complicated, and you can start getting very frustrated because you could say, man, I could be doing something else, but instead I got to go do this thing. And if you have a business or some kind of investment that you find yourself pulling all of your time into, it might be time to cut bait on that business, even if it's making you money.